In December of 1928, Puller was assigned to the Nicaraguan National Guard detachment, where he was awarded his first Navy Cross for his actions from February 16th to August 19th of 1930. He led 5 successive engagements against superior numbers of armed bandit forces. He returned stateside in July 1931, completed a year-long company officer's course at Fort Benning, Georgia, thereafter returning to Nicaragua from September 20th to October 1st of 1932, and was awarded a second Navy Cross. Puller led American Marines and Nicaraguan National Guardsmen into battle of Sandinista rebels in the last major engagement of El Sandino Rebellion near El Sas on December 26th of 1932. Earning 2 Navy Crosses within a 2-year time frame. Let's get into it. After Puller inherited command of the Nicaraguan Guardia Nacional, called Company M, he was prepared to conduct operations against the Sandinista rebels, immediately departed on a patrol. Puller moved eastward for a 5-day sweep, but soon received orders to head northeast. The patrol moved by day and camped each night in the village. In the afternoon of June 4th, the company was at San Antonio, cooking a steer in preparation for trek to an uninhabited area around Mount Calandi. After hearing some gunshots to the north, Puller sent 13 men of the Guardia to investigate 1,000 yards beyond the town. Guardia encountered 6 rebels who may have been Sandinistas, and a firefight occurred. Guardia killed 1 rebel while the other 5 fled. The rebel bandit was armed with a Springfield rifle and Colt revolver. On June 6th, the patrol moved forward to the village of Los Cedros when it encountered an equally surprised force of Sandinista who were on top of a bush-covered hill that sloped about 175 yards down to the trail. Sandinistas opened fire on the patrol, and the patrol returned fire without hesitation. Puller dashed up the rise while yelling, "Charge!" Puller's men joined the attack, fired their weapons while charging the enemy. Puller and his Guardia were able to avoid being hit by small arms, fire and crude improvised grenades thrown by the rebels. 26, Puller's patrol was ambushed by rebels. Lee used a Lewis machine gun to keep the enemy pinned down while Guardia Nacional worked their way up the slope opposite the rebel ambush party. Puller's men penetrated the center of the rebel encampment, killing 16 rebels. 2 men were killed and 4 were wounded of Chesty's men. In order to obtain medical care for the wounded, Puller immediately withdrew back to Jinotega. During Puller's withdrawal, his patrol was ambushed twice but suffered no more casualties and fought off the ambushers. Puller's Guardia killed at least 8 more rebels. Puller's force arrived back at Jinotega September 30th after the raid on the rebel encampment. The final battle of Nicaragua was the Battle of El Sas, December 26, 1932, as Puller's force of American Marines and Nicaraguan National Guard ambushed by rebels from both sides of the tracks. Puller and William A. Lee quickly with their troops immediately engaged the rebel ambushers. After a firefight, the Marines and Guardia Nacional were able to drive off the rebels. Puller's victorious force suffered 3 dead, 3 wounded for the Guardia Nacional. The rebels suffered 31 killed and lost 63 lives captured by Puller's force. After his service in Nicaragua, Puller was assigned to Marine Detachment and American Legation in Beijing, China, commanding a unit of China Marines. He then went on to serve aboard USS Augusta, a cruiser in the Asiatic Fleet, which was commanded by then-Captain Chester W. Nimitz. Puller returned to the States June 1936 as instructor at the basic school in Philadelphia, where he trained Ben Robert Shaw, Pappy Boyington, and Lew Waltz. In 1933, he returned to the Augusta as commander of the onboard Marine Detachment and back to China, disembarking in Shanghai in May 1940 to serve as executive officer, commanding officer of 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, until August 1941. Major Puller returned to the United States on the 28th of 41. After a short leave, he was given command 1st Marine Battalion, 7th Marines of the 1st Marine Division, stationed at New River, North Carolina, which would later be renamed Camp Lejeune. World War II in Europe had already been going on for several years at this time. The United States had laid neutral until 1941, the bombing of Pearl Harbor. The United States had suffered a devastating hit from the Empire of Japan on the island of Oahu, Pearl Harbor Naval Base. The Empire of Japan was trying to slow down the United States fleet so they could begin invading other countries in Asia. What Japan wasn't counting on was the United States Marine Corps. You could bet your ass Chesty Puller wanted to be right in it. Soon arriving at the Guadalcanal, Lieutenant Colonel Polar led his battalion in a fierce action along the Nicaragua, in which Polar's quick thinking saved 3 of his companies from annihilation. In the action, these companies were surrounded and cut off by a larger Japanese force. Polar ran to the shore, signaled a United States Navy destroyer, the USS Monson, and then directed the destroyer to provide fire support while landing craft rescued Marines from their precarious position. Officer in charge of the group landing craft was killed while providing cover fire for his landing craft for the Marines as they evacuated the beach, and was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. To date, the only Coast Guardsman to receive decoration. Polar, for his actions, was awarded a Bronze Star Medal with a Combat V device. Later on the Guadalcanal, Polar was awarded his 3rd Navy Cross, and is later known as the Battle for Henderson Field. Guadalcanal, Polar was awarded his 3rd Navy Cross, and is later known as the Battle for Henderson Field. Polar commanded 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, one of 2 American infantry units, defending the airfield against a regiment-strength Japanese force. 3rd Battalion of the U.S. Army's 164th Infantry Regiment fought alongside the Marines in a firefight on the night of October 24th. 17 and the 3-164th sustained 70 casualties. The Japanese forces suffered 1,400 killed in action, and the Americans held the airfield. He nominated 2 of his men. One of them was Sergeant John Bastión for Medals of Honor. Polar was wounded himself November 8, 1942, during the Battle of Coley Point, suffering arm and leg wounds during a Japanese attack on his command post. His injuries were serious, requiring surgery, and command was temporarily assigned to Major John E. Weber of the 3-7. Polar was released from the hospital and resumed command of his battalion on November 18th. Polar was then made the executive officer over the 7th Marine Regiment while serving in the capacity of the Battle of Cape Gloucester. Polar was awarded his 4th Navy Cross for overall performance of duty between December 26, 1943 and January 19th of 1944. During this time, when the battalion commanders of 3rd Battalion, 7th Marines, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines were under heavy machine gun mortar fire, he expertly reorganized the battalion and led successful attack against the heavily fortified Japanese defensive positions. He was promoted to colonel effective February 1st of 1944, and by the end of the month he had been named commander of the 1st Marine Regiment. In the summer of 1944, Polar's younger brother Samuel D. Polar, executive officer of the 4th Marine Regiment, was killed by an enemy sniper in Guam. This all leading up to the Battle of Peleliu. In September and October of 1944, Polar led the 1st Marine Regiment into the protracted battle on Peleliu, one of the bloodiest battles in Marine Corps history. The 1st Marines under Polar's command lost 1,749 men and wounded approximately 3,000, but those losses did not stop Polar from ordering frontal assaults against the well-entrenched enemy. He would come under significant criticism for not asking for reinforcements when both he and his regiment were at point of exhaustion, and when the Corps Commander, General Roy Geiger, visited Polar's command post, he found Polar shirtless with a corncob pipe in his mouth and a badly swollen leg. General Robert Cushman believed that Polar was a great combat leader. His aggressive nature limited his understanding of combat to launching constant attacks regardless of circumstance. As a result, on the strain on both Polar and the regiment, Geiger ordered Rupertus to pull all but the annihilated 1st Marine Regiment out of the line as they were no longer combat effective. Within days, the other 2 regiments would also be withdrawn from the island and replaced by 3 Army regiments who would also be eventually pulled out.